Good afternoon. My name is Brooks Berndt. I am the Environmental Justice Minister for the United Church of Christ. Welcome to this installment of Creation Justice webinars. I'm normally joined by my co-host, the Reverend Michael Malcom. At this moment, Michael is speaking in a funeral service, but we hope to have him join us later. We're going to jump right into our program today. We have an exciting group of young voices who are joining us. And to frame our conversation for today, what I would say is this. In our society, electoral politics is often a team sport, and not only a team sport, but a blood sport. And in the combative election seasons that we endure in our country, we often seem to lose sight of the values that really should guide us when we make these important decisions. I think near the top of the list when it comes to values and priorities is care and concern for this world that our younger generations are in the process of inheriting. And so when one votes with children and youth in mind, one is really voting with the environment in mind. And when one is voting with the environment in mind, one is really voting for the children and the youth. And so all of these issues become interconnected when you begin to reflect upon one's values and the critical choices that we have to make. So let me introduce our panelists today and to tell you our game plan. What we're going to do is we're going to divide our panelists into two groups. And up first, we're going to have some of our younger panelists speak to you. We have with us Aaron Collins Anderson, Elijah Chhin-Lawrence, Isaiah Mason, and Evie McBride. We're going to take time to hear from each of them. And the first question that I have for our panelists is this. First, tell us your age and tell us about why you've become particularly interested and passionate in this upcoming election. What are the issues that have you really concerned? So tell us about that.
So my name is Evie McBride, and I'm 11 years old. I become interested in this election because I think that to help overcome the climate crisis, we need a strong leader who will acknowledge that climate change is real and not brush it away as not important. We need politicians who care about climate change and will lead us on the right path. I am passionate about this because I worry what the world will look like when I'm an adult. I'm relying on adults to make the right choices for a better future for me and other kids.
All right. Thank you, Evie. Great to have you with us. And I know from pastors at your church that you are a member of your church's Green Team. You're located in New Hampshire at Church of Christ at Dartmouth College. So thank you so much for joining us. Good to hear from you. All right. Up next, let us hear from Aaron Collins Anderson from St. Peter United Church of Christ in Houston, Texas. What would you like to tell us, Aaron?
I'm Aaron Collins Anderson, and the reason I'm trying to get involved in this year's election is because, one, I don't want Trump in office because he's handled things terribly on everything. So that's one of the reasons.
All right. Good to have you with us. And you are joined by your brother, Elijah Chhin-Lawrence. Elijah, would you like to weigh in? Tell us how old you are and what's particularly important to you this election season.
Yes, I would like to.
All right. Go for it.
Okay. I am Elijah. I am almost 14 years old, and though I've struggled to keep up with everything regarding the election, I have been able to know about all of the important parts, or most of the important parts anyway. I'm really passionate about it because I want to see a president who acknowledges everything wrong that's happening in the world, instead of somebody whose hair looks like a corn on the cob and says that COVID is disappearing when it's not. So.
All right. Thank you, Elijah. And up next, Isaiah Mason is coming to us from Hamden, Connecticut, where he is a part of Spring Glen Church. Isaiah, what would you like to tell us about this upcoming election?
Well, I'm Isaiah Mason, and I'm 12 years old. I have been particularly interested and passionate about the upcoming election because we need a change in the White House. I believe we need a president who cares about all the people in the United States, including people of color. We need a president who cares about stopping the pandemic and taking care of the environment. We need a president. I think it's important to vote as the current president stays in office. Issues like climate change and pollution will keep happening.
Right. All right. Thank you, Isaiah. Excellent. And another question I have for all of you, what do you think adults need to know before voting, and what message would you like to give them? Do you have thoughts on that, Evie?
I think that adults need to know that it is important to vote. If enough people get out and vote, then we can make a change. It is also important to vote for someone who will do the right things for the world. I can't vote, so when the adults are voting, I encourage them to think about what's right for future generations.
All right. Thank you. And then Elijah or Aaron, do you have some thoughts you'd like to contribute to that question about what you think adults need to know before voting?
Not much. I agree with everything she said. So.
All right. Good. Isaiah, do you have some thoughts on that subject?
I think before the elections, adults should educate themselves about the candidates they're voting for so they make the right decision. Adults need to make sure they are registered to vote. In Connecticut, the deadline to register is October 27, 2020. However, every state is different.
All right. Thanks. I appreciate it's the practicalities that matter in this election more so than other elections. So good to get that information out there. All right. Let's see. So all of you are connected to a church. I'm wondering how you see your church and your faith and your values like love of neighbor, caring for God's creation. How do you see those connected to the critical issues our country faces today? Evie, would you like to get us started again?
Sure. So I think it's important for Christians to protect the earth because we believe that God made the earth and called on us to protect it. Christianity also teaches us that we need to stand up for the people who are most affected by problems in the world. Justice means equality. If we aren't helping clean up this mess that we made, then we aren't acting with justice and we aren't helping people in need.
All right. Thank you. I like that perspective. Aaron, do you have some thoughts to contribute on that section as how you see church life and faith connecting?
I agree with Evie on that one.
All right. She's a leader. Elijah, do you have any thoughts to chime in?
Yeah, I do agree with her. And with everything that has been going on in the world, I've actually made a comparison of what is happening to the Bible and a few other things. But the big one that I want to focus on is the fact that in the Bible, Noah builds the ark because God floods the earth. In a way, now I've thought about this a lot in comparison to global warming.
All right.
Yeah.
So you're seeing some danger on the horizon?
Yeah.
See some parallels?
And while I don't think global warming is going to take out like all the land in the world. It's going to, if something very big like that happens, an event like that, it will damage society.
Yeah. Well, we certainly know that with climate change, there's rising sea levels and there's increased flooding. Even where I'm at in Ohio, what we see is a lot more rain than we've seen in previous years. Isaiah, what connections are you making between faith, church, and thinking about voting?
Well, I think everybody in church is family, no matter what they look like, talk like, think like, learn like, believe like. They are family to me. Church has helped me understand love my neighbor is not actual neighbors, but all humanity. Spring Glen Church has also taught me that natural environment is God's creation, and we need to take care of it as well as we need to take care of each other. The current president has taken apart the EPA and started fracking in states. We need to change our president to help the environment heal the wounds that people have caused.
All right. Thank you. Well, thanks to each of you for giving your thoughts and ideas. You're certainly leaders for us to listen to and to heed and acknowledge as we get ready for voting. So we're delighted to have each of you here and to hear from you. We'll now transition to three of our other guest panelists for today, who are each leaders for youth organization. We've got Caleb DeBerry coming from us from Chicago, Rishi Ranabothu from Cary, North Carolina, and Kate Roney from Sonoma, California. So let's to start things off, each of you, as a leader of an organization, as I mentioned, tell us about your organization and what you're doing right now. Kate, would you like to get us started?
Sure. My name is Kate Roney. I am from Sonoma County, California. I'm 18, and I'm a rising freshman at Claremont McKenna College. And I'm here today representing an organization of whom I'm the director of climate action called the National Children's Campaign. And so essentially what NCC is we are a national, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization. And our mission and our goal is to make sure that the 74 million youth in America are being represented and made a priority by politicians and by people in the government, and making sure that when they are making these big decisions that are going to disproportionately impact youth, they're really taking into account the implications of those decisions. And so that's something that we're really, really passionate about. And we work on a lot of different issues. However, climate, of course, is one of our main priorities. And so in terms of the election, we are partnering with an organization, a well-known youth climate organization called 0 Hour, and they are partnering, we're collaborating on a project and a campaign called Vote for Our Future. And essentially that campaign is working to make sure that adults, as allies and advocates for youth who can't vote themselves, they're going out and they're making sure that they're thinking of youth when they go to the polls and when they're making these big decisions.
Great. Good to hear about your work. And we've had 0 Hour on here as well for our webinar. Great. Caleb, tell us about the campaign that you're working on right now in the organization.
Well, hi, everyone. I'm Caleb DeBerry. I am from Chicago, Illinois, and I work with Vote 16 USA. I run the Illinois chapter. And so what I do with Vote 16 Illinois is to want to lower the voting age in local elections. So city council, mayor, offices like that, school boards, and we also have lots of offices that work on climate in Chicago and special districts and in Illinois across the board. And so what I do and what the national organization does is work to lower the voting age across the country in those localities and eventually across every election, even nationwide, to make sure that young people have the voice that they can use at the ballot box to support the initiatives that they support. And we've seen youth voice at the forefront of the climate movement, especially with Youth Climate Strike and other similar organizations. We want to make sure that we don't just hear them, but that we listen to them by having them use their vote.
Thank you. Appreciate that. That's an important cause there. All right. And then Rishi, would you like to tell us about your organization and what you're working on?
Sure. Also, just before I begin, thank you, Reverend Brooks, for conducting this webinar and giving us youth a voice and inviting us. I'm privileged to participate and appreciate everyone who's attending this afternoon and panelists. So I'm the founder, I'm Rishi Ranabothu, as Reverend Brooks just said, the founder of NCIPL's Youth Leaders Initiative. And the Youth Leaders Initiative is a youth network focused on educating, inspiring, and mobilizing youth to empower and lead faith and spiritual communities to act on climate change. This is an initiative local to North Carolina, while NCIPL is a branch of the National Interfaith Power and Light organization. So in the 2 years since the start of the initiative, we've enabled and supported many youth in climate action by providing knowledge and resources for a variety of projects like fundraisers, recycling initiatives, and advocacy. We also have quantified these results by performing energy audits and savings analysis. In addition, we host events such as our annual gathering of youth leaders and participate in advocacy like the Youth Climate Strikes and 50th Earth Day celebrations. During COVID, we are online with education and outreach, inviting local youth leaders and professionals to webinars and town halls. And that's been what we've been doing. We've been doing online events like webinars, town halls, inviting the local sustainability elected officials in our region to talk to our youth about what youth can do and how the government is looking to the future.
All right, thank you. Good to hear about those important initiatives. Now, the question I have for each of you is, what has you especially passionate and fired up with regard to this upcoming election? Are there particular issues and causes that you are front and center for you? Caleb, would you like to chime in first?
Sure. Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yeah, are there particular issues that have you passionate and fired up that are front and center for this upcoming election?
Yeah, of course. So climate change is, of course, one of them. We're in a crisis, and as young people, we need to make sure that our future is protected by the policymakers today, because we're reaching our breaking point of no return. And so we need to make sure that we take significant action now. And one of the things at Vote 16 that we talk about the most is that all politics are intersectional. So all issues really affect young people. So we also talk a lot about education because we need to make sure that as young people, we get the quality of education that we deserve. And we talk about criminal justice to make sure that young people aren't, falsely accused or put in or incarcerated for like long periods of time, to make sure that we have a justice system that's accountable to us. We want to fight for, all of these issues that matter to us, that are near and dear to our heart. So, really, we dip our toes in pretty much every issue, but yeah, all of them are priorities to us.
Kate, what thoughts do you have about what's front and center for you in this upcoming election?
Absolutely, climate change is top of my priority list personally, especially because I live in Santa Rosa, California specifically. And in 2017, we were really, really impacted by the Tubbs fires. And having gone through a firestorm like that and being evacuated in the middle of the night, not knowing if my house was going to still be standing the next morning, seeing so many of my friends lose their houses and still having to deal with the implications of that several years later. Some of them aren't even moved back into their houses yet. And so seeing that these wildfires, which are coming back every year and getting larger and larger, and even now I have all the windows in the house closed up super securely because the smoke is gone for one day and now it's back again. And so just seeing firsthand the impacts the climate crisis has on these wildfires and in exacerbating the effects of them, it really gives me a personal reason why climate change. I think everyone should care about climate change, but it really has shown me the effects, and it's given me some real life experience with what the future could look like unless we act really fast, and we act now. So that's why I'm really passionate about it. And I think everybody, when they're going to the polls, I don't encourage people to vote either which way. We're a nonpartisan organization. I just encourage you, when you're going to the polls and when you're voting on measures, when you're voting for elected officials, make sure you're thinking about the future that you want to have, and you're thinking about the climate crisis and all the environmental and environmental justice implications that the climate crisis presents, because it doesn't affect and impact everyone equitably and equally. I think a lot of us already know that, and especially disproportionately affects youth, because we're the generations that are going to have to deal with the worsening effects and impacts of climate change.
Right. Thank you for that perspective, and we're certainly thinking about everything that those of you in California and throughout the West Coast are contending with the fires that are happening. So we are with you in solidarity. Let's see, Rishi, what thoughts do you have about what's you're passionate about and what should be of utmost concern in this upcoming election?
Yes, so of course the climate crisis is the biggest issue of the decade, and even decades before. But for me, this election is a key time to decide our future related to three of the biggest issues of today's world, which is the COVID pandemic, racial tensions, and the climate crisis. So first, talk about the first two before moving on to the big issue that is the climate crisis. But the coronavirus pandemic has become a huge crisis because of our lack of unified initial response, and we kept repeatedly opening the lockdown early. And if we continue this trend, there is really no end in sight soon. So we need to be prepared not only for this pandemic, but for future pandemics that could occur. Like, all us youth are here out of school and isolated along with everyone else across the globe. But a stronger response could have had us back in school by now, or even next month, or even earlier, and have us less worried for our health and safety. So this election will be able to decide whether we live in fear of the virus or we conquer it and move forward. And during this time also, racial tensions are escalating continuously, and preventable incidents continue to occur, and the election can also change the direction of this issue. And last but not least is the looming climate crisis, which will become irreversible in only 10 years. So if we do not start building momentum now, we will shoot past our 2030 deadline of permanent damage. The US is a global leader and needs to take charge, unlike the recent actions of withdrawing the Paris Climate Agreement and rollback of countless environmental policies. Climate change is the prominent issue of this generation, stemming from years of abuse and neglect of God's creation. So while many individuals are making small steps by installing LED light bulbs or recycling, the people in power continue to turn a blind eye and let profits decide the direction that the world goes. So this election is a deciding factor for the world's issue and the world's stance on the issue of the climate crisis.
Thank you for that perspective and hitting upon those three issues. Great. And I'm now being joined by my co-host, Reverend Michael Malcom. And thank you, Michael. We're glad to have you join. I know you've been busy tending to a funeral and so forth, so thank you for joining in on us. We've had quite some strong messages here today from our panelists. And so right now we're hearing from Rishi, Kate, and Caleb, who have been talking to us about their organizations and what they're most passionate about. I think, I guess I'd be curious to hear from your experiences, Caleb, Kate, and Rishi, about what have you found to be effective in communicating about climate change, or what are your conversations like with either your peers or with adults? Are you in the business of often a feeling like you're trying to persuade people or people on board, or the people haven't thought about it? What are your experiences when it comes to talking with people about the climate crisis and its importance right now? Let's see. Kate, do you have any thoughts on when you're involved in your campaign, what the conversations are like and what you found to be effective communication?
Yeah, sure. So in addition to my role as Director of Climate Action for NCC, I also hold leadership positions at two other organizations, Schools for Climate Action, which is technically an initiative of the National Children's Campaign, and Cultivate America, which is a sister organization of NCC. And both of those are heavily climate focused. And so I do a lot of my work, essentially all of it is about the climate crisis and its implications. And I think one of the most common things I've noticed is people don't tend to realize how intersectional, to use Caleb's word that he mentioned earlier, they don't realize how intersectional the climate crisis is. There is not going to be a single facet of life that will not be impacted in some way, shape, or form by the climate crisis. And it exacerbates a lot of the already existing inequalities in the world. And I think people don't tend to realize that. They think it's just an environmental, purely environmental issue, which some people, for them, that's not quite enough and doesn't really grab their attention. And since I live in California, the majority of the people I deal with locally are fairly liberal and left-leaning, and usually are more accepting to what I have to say. But with Schools for Climate Action, we are a nonpartisan organization, and we've met with several very conservative members of Congress, and we have talked to them about the climate crisis, why it's important they should act. And for the most part, I'm starting to see a shift towards they're being a little bit more accepting, even if they're being a little bit hesitant right now. And in personal experience, I grew up Catholic, and we have a lot of friends in the area that are fairly conservative. Some of them are really, really passionate Trump supporters, which is an interesting dynamic. But even talking to them and talking it through with them, making sure I'm taking a step back and I'm being compassionate, even if I really strongly disagree personally with a lot of their viewpoints, taking a step back and presenting them with information and saying, just making that connection and saying, here is something that you personally care about. This is how it can connect to the climate crisis. So the fires in this area, that's been extremely effective in saying, if you take a step back and you look at a little bit of the science, you'll see that it's not just because we're not sweeping the floors of the forest. It's not just forest mismanagement. It's also the climate crisis that's really impacting that. And the same thing happens when I'm meeting with conservative representatives. Usually what we try and do is we bring in an issue that they're already passionate about and they're already champions on. And we say, for example, if there was a conservative representative we met with that's really passionate about women's rights and domestic abuse and ending that and ending domestic violence. And we said, here is how the climate crisis disproportionately affects women, and bringing in the things that you're already passionate about. It helps make that connection and bridge that gap. And that's what I've seen that's been really effective.
All right. Thank you. That's an insightful perspective that you've offered. Rishi or Caleb, would you like to weigh in on what your conversations have been like and what you found to be effective in talking about the climate crisis?
So, like what Kate said, tying climate crisis into things that people are already passionate about, especially when talking to for youth, most of them recognize that the climate crisis is an issue that they need to needs to be addressed. But the ones people who aren't really passionate about it, are people who want to leave it to the adults and the people in power who aren't really doing much about it. So overcoming that, helping them understand that they need to advocate for their future is the main point of conversation when I'm talking with youth. And with adults, like what Kate said, drawing the line, connecting it to what they're passionate about. So NCIPL is a faith organization, so we typically use faith as the bridge to connect their beliefs to the importance of the climate situation.
All right. Thanks. I appreciate that. Reverend Malcom, do you have some thoughts you'd like to chime in as you join us? Any questions you'd like to answer?
Yeah, first let me say thank you for being with us, and to look and see this panel of diverse climate leaders is awesome. Double A, if I could grow hair, I would grow hair and it'd be just like yours. I'm just saying. That's sharp, brother. That's sharp. Listen, I did want to ask a question, because you all talked about what we should do. My question, I guess, for you all is, what have been your best practices when it's come down to engaging people on this climate talk? So I guess, Isaiah, I'd love to ask you, brother, because I like your hair too. What would be your best practice when you talk to your peers, your other kids, about climate?
Well, I would say, like, maybe talk to your parents about getting solar panels and like using compost and all that green stuff, so we're not always using oil and bad stuff for the earth.
I appreciate that. How about you, Elijah? I see you over there as well. I hadn't heard your voice yet. What would be your best practice when you're talking to your peers, your friends about climate? What does that conversation look like?
I would the best practice for me would be to make my own thing, make more of my own daily things rather than going to get them at stores. I'm actually going to start making my own soap instead of buying, or I'll buy the ingredients, but yeah.
All right. I see a line of Elijah soap coming out. That's good.
Yeah, I call my company Elijah's Crafting Bench, because it's not just going to be soaps; it's going to be a few other things. But yeah.
All right. Hopefully, since I've let you be on this webinar, you can send me a sample product in the mail. So, yeah, that sounds good. I like that. All right. Should we take an opportunity now to see if we've got some questions from the audience? If you're in the audience, you can put in a question by clicking on the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen and typing it in. We'd love to hear what your thoughts and questions are.
I ask this question, man, if it'd be okay. I guess, Evie, I'll ask you the question. First, am I saying that right? Is it Evie?
Evie.
It's Evie.
Evie, okay. Thank you. Now, we just heard some of the things that Elijah has upcoming for his future projects around sustainability. Do you have any future projects that you have coming up around sustainability?
I don't know.
You plan on taking over the world some kind of way, and what does that look like?
I guess just making sure that people know that it's a big deal and that they can do something about it by voting and things like that.
Yeah. Dope. Kate, how about you?
Yeah, I am working with several of the organizations. We're developing projects, and we're trying to, specifically with Schools for Climate Action, we are trying to engage as many schools as possible in passing climate resolutions. That is essentially the foundation of our organization. And so we work with school boards, student councils, PTAs, education affiliated organizations, and we have them pass strong nonpartisan climate resolutions that call on Congress to take immediate climate action. And it is really, really important and vital. And when we take those resolutions, and obviously when we're not in a global pandemic, we go and we hand deliver them to all 535 offices of Congress. And it's really, really impactful having that in-person one-on-one meeting. And so we're working on developing trainings And we have some great resources on our website about how to pass a climate resolution in your school, whether that's through school boards or student councils. And also the Vote for Our Future campaign, we have an upcoming event. It's a concert/rally on, I believe, October 17th. And you can follow the National Children's Campaign on and Vote for Our Future on most major social media platforms to stay up to date and engaged on that. And we're really trying to make sure that through that campaign, we're getting as many youth to speak to adults in their lives, make sure that they are voting on behalf of them, and make sure that they are engaging with their civic duties and taking action as best they can. And also recognizing that this election, although the presidency is a really, really vital and important piece of it, that's not all you vote on election day. You vote on a number of different measures. And another important thing that you vote on is school board members. And if you're taking youth into account when you're casting your ballot, it's really important that you make sure that you have school board members who have a very direct impact and very real impact on youth in your lives. Making sure that you have school board members that will really prioritize youth and are willing to make the necessary changes in the school district and in the schools to really, because education is so impactful and you want that to be the best it can be, and you want them to be putting the youth and their constituents at the forefront of all of that.
One of the things that I keep hearing you all reference is voting. How important is voting to you all? And I'll let anybody jump in for that. Not just how important it is for you, but what difference do you think the voting really can make right now?
Well, I think voting is one of the most important things you can do right now. We have, Vote 16 is nonpartisan, of course, and we work with really everybody. We've had but voting is the best way to make your voice heard, especially when you research your candidates thoroughly and make sure that they fight for what you believe in. And on so many issues, especially environmental issues in this election, we need to make sure that we get people to go out and vote to make sure that their voices are heard on this.
Great. We've got some questions that have appeared in the chat box. One thing I think would be remiss not to make note of and to allow any comment on is that this upcoming Friday is a Friday for the Future Day of Action. Are any of you participating, or have any of you participated in past Fridays for the Future actions? Rishi, have you been a part of any of that?
Any other climate strikes?
Yes, yeah, the climate strikes. I've been before the COVID pandemic. I joined a climate strike that was in Raleigh, and with NCIPL. I remember I think it was around April. So yeah, that's one of the biggest advocacy events for climate, of course, and September of last year. So I would have liked to have more youth out there, but it was interesting because I saw youth from my school who I have talked to about climate change, and even those who I didn't know who were interested in political sphere at all. So, and I even met students from other schools I knew, and it was a great gathering of youth who were interested in climate change, and also adults and organizations who were taking charge of the climate initiative in the state. So.
Great. Other thoughts or reflections on that? We've also got a question about the use of social media and activism. Any of you use social media at all for raising awareness or on these issues, or in other ways, and what have been your experiences about that?
I can speak to this a little bit. I can start us off. I think social media is a little bit of it's an interesting tool because it is extremely effective and it can do so much good. And it's an amazing tool, especially for smaller organizations starting off. You want to reach a larger platform and a broader audience. It can be extremely effective for sharing your viewpoints and for connecting with people and gaining support. However, I have noticed that the use, like the word polarization, definitely, that's a great word. Because on social media, it's hard to get the full picture of a lot of you don't always get all the information. It's usually just a snapshot of the issue. And so I think that can lead to a little bit of misinformation, and people don't necessarily always fact check everything that they're getting. And that can lead to a little bit of performative activism rather than really engaging with the material and really getting your point across in a measured and in an accurate way. And so I think it can do so much good, and especially for youth organizations and activists, it's a great way to connect with other youth. And social media obviously has served a large role in a lot of the organizations that I work for and I work with. And however, you do have to be careful with it, and you have to make sure that you're not taking everything at face value, which can be a little bit tricky because obviously when I look at a post on Instagram or on a tweet, I don't usually spend a long time going and fact checking every little thing. Because obviously almost no one has that much time on their hands, but it's just something to be aware of and make sure that you're not immediately believing everything you see.
So I want to go a little bit on the lighter side. What song do you think that we should be listening to that would motivate us to get out and vote? What song do you think that I should, as a grown person with a whole lot of gray hair, what song should I be listening to get me motivated to get out and vote? Oh, I see the wheels just turning. Double A clapping his hands. He got something.
You should listen to Lecrae.
Lecrae, I like Lecrae. I do like Lecrae. Yeah. Any song in particular?
Oh, it's called Set Me Free. Sorry.
Set Me Free, what by Lecrae?
Yeah, by Lecrae featuring YK Osiris.
We might need to get the spelling of that in there. I might be putting in Lakayry. I don't know. Yeah, but we can put together a music list to go on the email after this webinar. So
I think that would be dope, Red.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, would you all be willing to help us put together a playlist so we can put out for people to be motivated to vote?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. I love it.
All right. I got the spelling. I was about to type in Lecrae or something, but I got it now. I got it. All right. Good.
That's awesome, man.
Well, I think, Michael, by bringing up music, I mean, it's bringing up what sustains us, and so that's a broader topic in terms of what any of our panelists can weigh in and what helps keep you going, or what, so you're not getting, burnt out with activism or down caring about climate crisis. What are some things that keep your spirits up?
What brings you joy?
Personally, I have 2 dogs that I'm really, really close with, and I love both of them very dearly. They're really adorable. and spending time with them. So taking a moment to kind of unplug and like turn off my phone, or at least put it away from me, and just like playing with my dogs and cuddling with them. And also spending time with my friends, just making sure that I know it's a place of extreme privilege to be able to step back and unplug. But I think it's really important to do so when you can, and also recognizing that you're not always going to be going full force ahead, and especially in a global pandemic when we're already dealing with so many other things, having to worry about, the impending threat of the climate crisis. That's another added thing. And so that's another added worry. And so making sure you're not too hard on yourself and recognizing that you're not always going to be able to care really deeply about every single issue all the time. And so making sure that you're saying, if you're scrolling through and you see a really cool video on a topic that you're interested in and you feel like you should educate yourself on, but you're feeling really tired and you feel like you've consumed too much information, you can always save it and come back to it when you're feeling up to it. That doesn't mean that you're being apathetic towards the issue. You can space it out, and it's not a sprint, it's a marathon for almost every issue. And so making sure that you are celebrating the smaller successes, because I know, especially as a lot of people know, working in large social issues, especially the climate crisis, change feels really slow and progress sometimes seems non-existent. But if just celebrating those little things and making sure that you're reassuring yourself that you are doing the best you can and being understanding with yourself is definitely the best advice I can give.
That is great advice. Thank you for that. Any other words of wisdom and bits of advice?
Well, one thing or a couple things I like to do to clear my head are like running or skateboarding. It just makes me feel very like free, and I can clear my head while I'm doing those things.
I like playing sports.
Good. What sports do you like to do?
I play baseball, football, flag football, and basketball.
Nice.
I like to just go outside and ride my bike or go in the woods. Just makes me feel nice.
Great. Time outdoors is good for the soul. Thank you.
Do you all have siblings, brothers and sisters? And if so, are they also involved in this with you, this work?
I have a younger brother, and he is involved also, but much lesser scale. He's 3 years younger, so he understands the issue's importance, but doesn't understand how much he can do to support and work towards, work and do this work. So he's involved on a much less scale than I am, but he still cares about the issue and is involved. So
Nice. All right. It's good to hear it's a family tradition there. All right. We're coming up. Michael, do you see any other questions before we roll into our closing thoughts and calls to action?
I don't see any other questions in the chat, but are there any future scientists on this panel? Anybody wanting to look at science, study science? It's like, I don't know, it's too early to tell.
yeah, I'm interested in not climate science, but biomedical technology.
All right.
Nice. Any future politicians?
Possibly Kate and Caleb. All right.
All right. Any future activists? All y'all should have said no, because I'm already an activist.
Yeah.
That was a trick question. You already doing the work, and as everybody is saying in the chat, we appreciate the work that you do. I'll tell anybody, I work hard with my young people because you all encourage and inspire me. Because what you've done is you've looked into our past and declared that that's not what you want for your future. and you've set out in the present to make a difference and to make a change and to raise your voice and call to consciousness those who are supposed to be leading you, to make them look at their future or look at your future. And it's up for us as adults to then go in and look to see what am I leaving to the generations that come behind me. And for us who are aware, we ought to be looking 7 generations ahead and ensuring that we are stewards for the 7 generations ahead. So again, thank you for being with us. Thank you for lifting your voice. Thank you for encouraging us and challenging us to do better. My kids change me every day because they challenge my way of thinking. Keep living, keep doing what you're doing. Keep lifting your voices. And I guarantee you that this world will change. Thank you again.
Thank you. Yes, we appreciate having all of you with us today for giving us your perspectives and your wisdom and your words. It'll help inspire us as we enter into the home stretch leading towards Election Day. And appreciate also that you have reminded us to do what we need to do to vote. And so that means learning what you got to do in your particular state for mail-in voting, so you can take care of it, take care of that ballot early for those of you getting ready to vote. So thanks for all of you for joining us. And Michael and I will be back next month. Next month we've got a slate of panelists who will be joining us. We've got Reverend Gerald Durley, we've got Reverend Lennox Yearwood, and we've got Corinna Gore will be with us. At least those 3 will definitely be with us, perhaps more. So looking forward that they will be getting us energized for the home stretch of this election season as we look to do what we can to make our values come to life as these critically important decisions are being made for the future of our country. So thanks again to everybody, and we'll be sending out an email with a YouTube link with the recording of this, along with any links that were referenced or actions, songs. We'll get some songs in there, and so all that will be coming out shortly. All right, thanks a lot, everyone.
Thank you all. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Good work.